It was assumed she would be vulnerable, simply another black woman living alone. What they failed to realize was that she had support monitoring their every action. The moving truck arrived on a Tuesday, late morning. This was a time when most people were at work or running errands. However, in Roseville, California, early retirement and home offices meant that people observed everything. And someone was already observing from across the street before the lift gate even touched the driveway. Rochelle Carrington, age 42, stood beside her black SUV, a clipboard held in her hand, offering the movers hushed directions. She was tall, with a self-assured stance and a tranquil gaze, moving with the grace of someone who conserved her energy. Her attire consisted of jeans, boots, and a long-sleeved t-shirt, marked with a small breakfast stain, a detail she disregarded. This was not a display of style. It was the beginning of a new phase in her life. She had finalized the purchase of the two-story home just 1 month earlier. It featured a Spanish tile roof, beige stucco, and neatly trimmed hedges. This was a place that declared, "I built this." And she had, though not as her neighbors imagined. The first visitor was a tall man wearing khaki shorts and a golf cap. He identified himself as Douglas Varnell, the head of the HOA. His handshake was brief and impersonal, and he avoided eye contact. "Are you moving in by yourself?" he inquired, observing the security camera boxes near the front door. "No, not everyone is here yet." "Well, if you need anything, we maintain order here," Douglas stated, briefly looking at the SUV before departing without acknowledging her. She observed him vanish behind his hedges. By sundown, Rochelle had unpacked sufficiently to consider the space habitable. Her home office was established, blinds were in place, and the kitchen was supplied. There were no signs, no music, and no boisterous visitors. Only her. Some plants adorned the porch, and a single folding chair was present. The following morning, a note was slid beneath her doormat. Reminder: all porch decor must adhere to HOA regulations. Flags, religious items, and political messages are prohibited. No name, no signature, just that. She chuckled. She didn't have a flag displayed, only a hand-painted ceramic sun her niece created in art class. It was hung askew beside the door. That afternoon, while adjusting her mailbox height, as the HOA had noted it was non-uniform, she observed a woman in yoga pants walking her dog slowly past her house. The dog paused, sniffing the grass, and the woman's gaze lingered a moment too long. "You new here?" the woman asked. "Looks like it," Rochelle responded, straightening. The woman offered a strained smile. "Well, the HOA is quite particular. It helps maintain the appearance of the neighborhood." "I'm familiar with the guidelines," Rochelle stated. The woman chuckled, but the sound lacked warmth. "That's good. We value a specific aesthetic for our neighborhood." The implication was unmistakable. Unbeknownst to them, beyond any prediction they could make, she had done more than simply read their book. She had studied classified briefing reports capable of disconcerting a senator. She had overcome language barriers, handled explosives, and participated in clandestine negotiations in countries she couldn't disclose. A neighborhood association would not deter her. Nonetheless, something felt amiss. She had relocated frequently, new towns, new cities, but the welcome felt staged. A forced pleasantness, conversations tinged with observation. Consequently, she installed the cameras, not out of suspicion, but out of readiness. One positioned above the door, another at the side entrance, and two angled in the front yard, addressing areas overlooked by most. That night, she stood on her porch with a glass of water, observing the street lights activate. A breeze rustled the leaves, and a lone car passed slowly, increasing its speed once it cleared her driveway. She felt no immediate danger, but also lacked a sense of ease. She dispatched a brief message from a disposable phone to a contact listed as Deb's Plumbing. Message content: settle incomplete. Activity already odd. Logging first flags. Standby. There was no response. She didn't require one. However, despite the stillness of that first week, Rachel sensed that the tranquility wouldn't persist for long. Within the second week, a subtle unease began to develop. The first sign was a formal notification affixed to her mailbox concerning parking regulations. The notice stated, "Driveway must be kept clear of oversized vehicles. Please use garage for storage." Her SUV was properly positioned, not obstructing pedestrian access, not encroaching on a neighbor's property, and it accommodated comfortably within the driveway. She removed the notice and placed it in the recycling bin. The following day, an unfamiliar man stood at the edge of her lawn, arms crossed, observing her as she watered the succulents in front of her bay window. "Hello," she called out. He remained silent, simply staring, before slowly walking away. That night, a second note appeared, printed entirely in capital letters. It read, "No unauthorized vehicles. Surveillance is active. HOA monitors street traffic." Surveillance. The irony caused her to laugh. She reviewed the surrounding area once more. Everything appeared normal, with the exception of a mounting feeling that someone, or multiple individuals, disapproved of her presence. Several days passed, and then the police arrived. It was shortly after 6 p.m. golden sunlight illuminating the porch. A patrol car stopped and parked directly in front of her home. Two officers, courteous but formal, approached. "Ma'am, we received a call regarding a disturbance," one of them stated. "Reports of loud arguing." She blinked. "I reside alone. Are there any visitors this evening?" "No. You are welcome to verify." They did not enter, but they recorded a few observations and then departed. 15 minutes elapsed before she observed Douglas Varnell once more. Identical khaki shorts, same gait. He did not approach the door this time, merely stood close to his mailbox, engaged in conversation with a woman in yoga pants. Both glanced towards her. Rachel opened her front door and stepped outside, signaling that she was aware of their presence. Douglas nodded once. "Just checking to ensure everything is all right over there," he called out. "I'm all right," she responded. "Good, the police visit when things don't conform to the regulations. Noise complaints, misuse of property. I pay the same fees as everyone else," she stated calmly. He raised his eyebrows, seeming to consider that a provocation, and then returned to his messaging. Later that week, the trash collection bypassed her house completely. While every other container on the street was serviced by sunrise, hers remained uncollected. She contacted the sanitation department. There was no record of a missed pickup request, they stated. "This might seem unusual," she commented, "but is it possible someone reported my house as vacant?" The woman speaking on the phone hesitated briefly. "Indeed, yes. That's what appears in the notes." Rachel took a slow, deliberate breath. "I reside here. We will resolve this." She ended the call and returned to her porch, holding her phone, the camera light blinking gently above. That evening, her back fence gate was discovered slightly open. Not fully, but enough to indicate someone had attempted to open it. The lock still engaged when she tested it, but the chain showed a new abrasion, as if it had been pulled. This was sufficient for her. She accessed the encrypted tablet she kept in a locked drawer in her home office and started a low-level alert. Possible harassment escalation. Passive monitoring began. Authorization to activate detail. Moments later, a reply. Authorization approved. Detail shifting from secondary to active. Karina Bell had lived 2 doors down for years. She was a retired postal worker who enjoyed begonias and frequently discussed her knees, seemingly avoiding conversations about politics. However, the residents of Briar Hollow Court were unaware that Karina had previously worked in logistics within international security, a confidential role originating from Langley many years prior. She was indebted to Rachel, a significant debt. That favor had now been requested. The following morning, Karina arrived at Rachel's door, presenting a basket of muffins and a quiet smile. She mentioned she thought you might appreciate some company, Rachel said. Rachel agreed and moved out of the way. "I'm assuming you're not simply visiting?" Karina asked, drawing closer. "I'm already diverting 2 drones away from your land. The homeowners association isn't your sole concern." Before Rachel could inquire about her meaning, a knock sounded at the door. And this time, it wasn't Karina with baked goods. It was 4:42 p.m. when they arrived, not in a squad car, not in a designated homeowners association vehicle. A silver sedan, notable for a cracked front headlight and excessively tinted windows, pulled up. Two men exited the vehicle. They wore khaki pants and tucked-in polo shirts, each with laminated badges attached to their belts, badges that appeared cheaply made. One held a clipboard. The other feigned taking photographs of her yard with a phone. Rachel recognized this pattern. She had witnessed similar encounters previously, not in the suburbs, but in Havana, in Berlin, and in Port-au-Prince. The imposter, the bullying tactic, the unauthorized figure who falters when challenged. She unlocked her door before they even reached it. Karina remained inside, seated peacefully on the living room couch, enjoying tea as if it were a typical Wednesday. "You must be Miss Carrington, the one with the clipboard," she stated, her tone dripping with false sweetness and a sense of superiority. "We're with the Briar Hollow HOA Enforcement Committee. We have a few items to discuss with you." Rachel rested against the doorframe. "Your badges are not scanning. You are not listed in the directory, and the HOA does not conduct in-person visits without a 72-hour notice." The man blinked, surprised she didn't react. "Ma'am," he said, adjusting his tone, "your porch has items that are not permitted, and we're receiving multiple complaints regarding frequent visitors." "Is that against the rules?" she asked, remaining still. The second man advanced. "We require you to step outside. We want to review the violations with you." "No, thank you." The first man's smile disappeared. "We're simply attempting to assist you in preventing fines. This situation could worsen." "I find that unlikely." They shared a glance. Then the expression changed. Without speaking, they moved quickly. One attempted to grasp her arm. The other reached for the screen door. Karina reacted before they made contact. "Back away," she stated firmly, moving with a skill unexpected of a retiree. Her phone was already in her hand, her thumb activating a sequence other than calling 911. "Who the hell are you?" one of the men demanded. "Back up," Karina said. The man pulled the door open forcefully. Rachel remained still. She didn't cry out. She didn't retaliate. She turned a little and pressed her hand down firmly on his wrist, securing her grip with her thumb tucked in and her elbow bent. It was a precise maneuver learned from her training. The man swore, taking a step back. "Enough," Rachel said softly. They weren't prepared for that. The second man recovered quickly. He moved forward again, but the sound of tires on gravel caused all three to stop. Two dark SUVs entered the street. There were no sirens, no lights, and no identifying markings, only a calm, consistent approach. The men glanced back, attempting to assess the situation. "You can run," Rachel stated, "but it will be more difficult." The men remained still. One appeared to be breathing heavily, while the other attempted to appear composed. Shortly after, both SUVs stopped. Four people emerged, two from each vehicle, dressed in ordinary clothing and wearing sunglasses, with no visible weapons. They proceeded together, swiftly and effectively. The individual holding the phone attempted to flee. He managed 6 feet before being restrained, with his arm twisted behind his back and his phone sliding across the pavement. The person with the clipboard made no attempt to resist. He simply sat down on the porch step, as if his confidence had been abruptly removed. One of the agents, a slender man with graying hair, addressed Rachel. "Miss Carrington, are you all right?" She affirmed her well-being. Minimal physical contact. No injuries were sustained. The camera recorded the entire incident. "Excellent," he stated, then turned to Karina. Karina shrugged, acknowledging the notification. The timing felt correct. Within 10 minutes, the two individuals posing as law enforcement officers were secured, their identities confirmed, and they were positioned on the curb, resembling reprimanded children. Residents started observing from behind curtains. Several opened garage doors and lingered in the darkness, feigning sweeping activities. No one intervened. Even Douglas Varnell, the taller of the two men, now in handcuffs, finally spoke. "We were just trying to make sure the neighborhood stayed safe." "From what?" Rachel inquired. He remained silent, but his eyes' movement towards the Douglas Varnell house indicated his intentions clearly. The other man's gaze directed at Douglas Varnell's house was observed. It wasn't missed by Rachel. It wasn't missed by the agents. It wasn't even missed by Karina, who now stood quietly beside the porch steps, arms crossed, her eyes fixed on the street as if observing a chessboard illuminate. An agent, a woman in her late 30s with a distinct New Jersey accent, overheard the interaction. She gave a single nod to her colleague and walked along the sidewalk towards Douglas's front door. He did not respond to the knock. Shortly after, the agent requested a second team. There were no sirens, only unmarked vehicles as previously. It was a display of clean, cold, silent efficiency. By this time, several more neighbors had emerged, remaining close to mailboxes and speaking quietly among themselves. None of them moved closer to the house. Rachel remained seated on her porch, still and observant, watching the events transpire. Karina stood beside her, a hand gently touching the porch rail. He never was that bright, Karina murmured. You know him? Rachel inquired. Not personally, but I've been observing his cameras for weeks. Rachel lifted an eyebrow. The ones he stated were for wildlife? Yes. It was peculiar how the wildlife seemed to resemble women walking their dogs or brown children on bicycles. The clipboard guy was escorted into one of the SUVs. The other individual, identified as Ronan Kessler, had a sealed juvenile record and resided just outside city limits. Both were hired laborers, not residents. However, their paychecks provided a lead. One of the agents returned to the porch, crouching to Rachel's eye level. We are currently reviewing surveillance footage. Your neighbor across the street has cameras. We are obtaining access through municipal override. The agent paused. Do you think he is connected? I believe whoever is orchestrating this considered you an easy target. Rachel gazed across the street. Douglas's front window blinds were now closed completely. You're going to find this surprising, the agent stated. Situations like this, they occur more frequently than one might assume. Fabricated HOAs, independent residents, private contractors, all operating discreetly. However, they selected the incorrect address this time. Karina quietly laughed. Absolutely. An hour elapsed, and the federal agents possessed sufficient evidence to knock on Douglas's door. This time he responded. Rachel didn't hear everything that was said, but she observed his expression when he understood this extended beyond a local matter. He was questioned about payments routed through a shell company, the number of anonymous police calls he had recorded from his residence, the fabricated notices, and the bogus HOA violations. He attempted to dismiss the inquiries. He supposedly stated, just doing my part to keep things orderly. However, order wasn't the core issue. The problem wasn't about porch decorations or SUVs. The difficulty arose because someone such as Rachel Carrington, given her measured actions and unwavering composure, undermined the sense of authority some residents valued in areas like this. They were unaccustomed to someone who didn't require their validation. Now, each of their methods had been recorded, the timing noted, and data compared. Returning to the porch, Karina moved nearer. Are you all right? I'm fine, Rachel replied. But I'm weary of this routine. Karina offered a slight smile. Perhaps a rewrite is in order. By evening, news had circulated. 2 arrests were made, a federal investigation commenced, and a request for voluntary interviews was sent to several homeowners on the block. Remarkably, no one questioned how Rachel had reacted so swiftly or why tactical agents had arrived in less than 10 minutes. They were unaware of the agency clearance, the debt of gratitude, or the discreet surveillance that had been ongoing for the past 5 weeks. Most importantly, they didn't realize who they were confronting as what seemed like a simple removal became a public event. Now, it was impossible to ignore what lay hidden just below the surface. By the next morning, the neighborhood felt shaken. It was evident in the closed garage doors, in the disrupted routines of morning walkers, and even the talkative couple on the corner remained silent. The normal pace was broken, and everyone understood the reason. Rachel was on her porch once more, holding coffee and with one leg crossed. There was no music, no book, only observation. She had experienced observation previously, in locations where a smile directed at the incorrect individual could result in detention. However, here in Roseville, the interactions followed a subtle understanding. Neighborhood expectations, community principles, safety anxieties, harassment disguised in a cardigan. Karina approached mid-morning, a file held beneath her arm. She remained silent until she was seated. They were digging deeper than I thought, she said. We caught 3 more devices near your yard, hidden in sprinkler heads. Rachel blinked. They planted audio? Worse, motion sensors, thermal reads. Somebody was building a case for something, or pretending to, from across the street. Another neighbor, an older woman named Leanne Price, peered through her curtains. This time, she didn't flinch when their eyes met. She was the one who called the cops on you. Twice, Rachel said quietly. Karina refrained from questioning how he possessed that information. Later that afternoon, a federal vehicle made a return visit, this time carrying official documents, subpoenas. The investigation had broadened. An examination of Douglas Varnell's finances uncovered a series of payments directed to private neighborhood enforcement agents working through a business named Civic Harmony Consultants, LLC. Their actions extended beyond simply fabricating HOA credentials. They were components of a loosely structured system designed to instill intimidation. This operation wasn't recent, nor was it particularly well concealed. The matter simply hadn't faced scrutiny before. Until now. Now, with a formal federal document involved, it was receiving serious consideration. A representative from the HOA board arrived later that day, appearing distressed. A quiet woman, Marisol Dupree, holding a notepad and offering apologies frequently. We weren't aware, Miss Carrington, she said. Douglas managed all enforcement concerns. We hadn't authorized any personal visits. He informed me you had, Rachel said. Marisol averted her gaze. I am truly sorry. Please don't apologize. Rachel emphasized the need for transparency, stating, let people know what happened. We will. Before Marisol departed, she hesitated at the foot of the porch steps. If it means anything, we're grateful you didn't retaliate, that you remained calm. Rachel responded, I didn't remain calm. I remained prepared. News of the incident spread beyond the cul-de-sac. By the weekend, a local news van arrived. The reporter did not make contact, simply filming discreetly from a distance until federal agents requested they depart. The incident was already gaining traction online. A recording from a neighbor's Ring camera captured a portion of the confrontation, including the fake HOA badge, the shouting, and the takedown. When the clip appeared on social media, it ignited widespread anger. This wasn't solely due to what occurred with Rachel, but also because the situation resonated with many. Messages flooded in from across the country. One person shared, "This happened to my dad in Austin." Another recounted a similar experience in Phoenix, noting that the police sided with the HOA. The pattern of individuals wielding rules as a tool, it's a genuine problem. The streets of Roseville became a subject of discussion, not due to their well-maintained lawns or excellent school ratings, but because of what occurs when private power believes it can operate without accountability. Later that night, Karina brought over 2 glasses of wine. The sun had set. The porch light hummed gently above them. You thinking about moving? She asked. No, Rachel said. Not yet. Karina nodded. Good, because it's different now. They know someone's observing from a distance, but the significant change wasn't among the neighbors. The realization dawned on Rachel. She understood how silence allowed them to operate and how a carefully chosen reply could effectively halt that activity. 2 days elapsed before a discreet meeting occurred at an unremarkable building close to the Sacramento Municipal Complex. There was no media coverage, no sensational announcements. Simply a table, 4 chairs, and 3 individuals who possessed a true understanding of how things functioned. Rachel was positioned at the far end, wearing all black and with a manila folder placed before her. Directly facing her was Agent Colin Braddock, the lead investigator for the now-active federal inquiry into Civic Harmony Consultants. A DHS cybersecurity representative sat to his left, their expression unreadable. Karina was positioned on Rachel's right, maintaining her usual composure. What you're dealing with, Braddock began, extends beyond this HOA, or even this neighborhood. The group you identified? They have been operating in clusters across several western states. Rachel acknowledged this with a nod. They exploit delayed accountability, focusing on local homeowners associations, retirement communities, and gated suburbs. Braddock indicated a tablet. They create a facade of authority, use regulations as weapons, and target individuals who don't conform, typically those with out-of-state license plates or who appear different, particularly if they move in without drawing attention. They went beyond establishing a false authority, Karina stated. They were collecting information. The DHS representative looked up. Your residence had passive thermal tags. That is not homeowners association technology. It's surplus military-grade equipment. Braddock leaned forward. Here's the part you're likely to find concerning. He indicated a flag communication from 6 months ago. One of our side channels detected it, but it wasn't initially prioritized. He slid the document across the table, a printout of an encrypted email chain with the subject line, New resident, confirmed background, CIA link. Rachel read it silently. Someone was investigating me before I even closed escrow. We believe so, Braddock stated. While they weren't entirely sure of your identity, their discomfort was evident, and the harassment began swiftly. It was a probing of limits. And if I had strongly opposed it, she mentioned they would portray me as the instigator. He confirmed this. It's a recognizable sequence. They instigate reactions, then amplify the pressure. They deliberately accumulate records to suggest instability. Karina added, they've underestimated this individual. Braddock offered a knowing smile. That's the consensus we've been receiving. This extended beyond individual grievances it always had. The situation Rachel encountered wasn't a simple dispute between neighbors. It was interwoven within a broader structure that relied on unspoken agreements. Following the meeting, as they headed to the car, Karina questioned the outcome. Do you believe this will hold now? With the charges and the exposure? Rachel responded, they'll suppress some of it, shielding the homeowners. Details will be concealed. But someone is observing now. It's no longer hidden. That evening, back at home, she retrieved a long untouched, dusty photo album from her bedroom closet. The album contained pictures from past projects, some with unclear faces, and others cut from international newspapers. Among them was a faded photograph of her mother standing in front of their house in Paterson, New Jersey, during the time a neighbor attempted to initiate eviction proceedings due to a zoning issue. She had resisted, steadfastly, and ultimately prevailed. That determination persisted. As dusk settled, Rachel stepped onto her porch once more. This time, she wasn't alone. Several neighbors, those who had previously avoided her, were walking dogs, watering plants, and acting as if they didn't notice her. A man across the street offered a small wave. She made no response. Not yet. She settled, crossed her arms, and gazed out at the cul-de-sac she now perceived distinctly. Not as a haven, but as a reflection. I used to think I could simply buy peace, she said aloud. Karina, having returned, responded while looking at her phone. You still can. It simply costs more than many anticipate. They remained in silence for a considerable time. Within the building, the cameras continued to record events. This wasn't due to an expectation of further incidents, but because detailed records were now essential for safety. Although the immediate danger seemed to have subsided, Rachel understood that the situation wasn't resolved. True success wasn't achieved through a single apprehension or a single exposure. It was about refusing to allow herself to diminish. A week later, the neighborhood had resumed its familiar routine. Lawn services were operating again, and children were riding their bikes. However, a palpable sense of caution lingered, particularly near the Carrington house. Some people offered waves, others deliberately avoided looking. A few seemed to desire an apology, but lacked the words to express it. Rachel didn't wait for them to decide what to do. Each morning, she worked from her home office. Her evenings were spent tending to the garden, which she had neglected since moving to Meadow Creek. She began walking around the neighborhood again, not out of obligation, but because she was able. Influence wasn't solely about defense. It was about existing openly without needing authorization. Karina arrived one evening, carrying a folded lawn chair and a chilled bottle of mineral water. I thought I'd keep you company, she said. They sat quietly for a while, observing the sky transform into a gentle orange hue. "I've been thinking," Karina stated. "Why do you think they were so bold? I mean, they didn't know who you were. But still, they didn't need to know." Rachel responded. "They just assumed I wouldn't fight back." Karina nodded. "Because most people don't. Because most people can't." They paused, letting the observation linger. It was an accurate assessment. Not everyone has a federal contact on speed dial. Not everyone has decades of tactical training. Not everyone has a Corina 2 doors down. And that's the point. The situation in Roseville extended beyond mere bias or intimidation. It involved a framework that facilitated individuals acting as gatekeepers, cloaking themselves in manufactured authority, fabricated concern, and deceptive neighborly gestures. They had established a functioning system. This system persisted until someone disrupted the established pattern. Afterward that evening, Rachel composed a letter at her desk. The letter was not addressed to the HOA, nor to her neighbors, but to a young woman she had yet to meet, someone who would eventually confront a similar circumstance. She wrote, "Don't wait for permission to have space. Claim it, subtly if possible, forcefully if necessary. Expect resistance. But remember, they consistently underestimate what they don't comprehend. Retain records, maintain composure, and most importantly, remain present, even when they desire your absence." She folded the paper, placed it within a journal, and slid it onto a shelf beside her badge. Not an award, not a recollection, a prompt, because this extended beyond a porch or a fence or a neighborhood rulebook. The narrative explored the lengths individuals would take to safeguard their perceived reality, and how swiftly that perception crumbled when someone asserted themselves and resisted conformity. The following Sunday, a community announcement circulated detailing a town hall meeting intended to rebuild faith and openness regarding neighborhood regulations. Douglas Varnell's name was discreetly eliminated from all HOA documentation. There was no formal justification provided. Rachel wasn't invited. However, she attended regardless. She positioned herself in the back row, remained silent, and simply listened, not to the spoken words. Regarding the atmosphere, however, the hesitant coughs, the measured language, the alteration in stance upon noticing her presence. Later, as she departed, Leanne Price approached her. "I wasn't aware the situation escalated to that degree," she remarked, adjusting her handbag strap. "We simply sensed something was amiss." "What was amiss?" Rachel inquired. Leanne paused. "I suppose I hadn't anticipated you would be so ready. I didn't anticipate needing to be." They remained there briefly. Then Leanne gave a short nod and walked off. This wasn't reconciliation, but it signaled the beginning of a reckoning. That night, Rachel posted a single sentence on her infrequently used social media account. "Politeness won't save you, but preparedness might." It quickly became widespread within days. People were no longer simply observing the drama. They were recognizing the underlying pattern, and perhaps, just perhaps, understanding it was time to disrupt it. So if you've reached this point, keep this in mind. Resilience isn't always about direct action. It can be found in a chair on a porch. It can be seen in a camera angled perfectly. It can be heard in a voice that remains strong. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe. Someone else out there needs to experience it as well. Laughter followed the reserve girl, until a video appeared showing her protecting herself with remarkable composure, shifting the opinions of both Roosevelt High and the online community against her tormentor. If you inquired among the students at Roosevelt High about who held sway in the corridors, the response would invariably be one name: Brielle Wentworth. 17 years old, known for her quick wit and consistently ahead of the latest trends, Brielle was more than a senior. She was the senior. Brielle's father was a prominent corporate attorney in Sacramento, while her mother managed a luxury staging company for real estate. Their home in El Dorado Hills had been featured in a spread showcasing modern home design. She drove a graphite Range Rover, sported limited edition sneakers that were yet to be released, and possessed a TikTok following exceeding that of many local influencers. To those outside, Brielle appeared to have everything, and she was content with that perception. Each morning presented an opportunity for a performance, She entered school with a graceful, almost effortless stride. Impeccable hair, perfect lashes, AirPods in, iced coffee in hand. Girls aspired to be her. Boys observed her every move. Teachers expressed frustration, but even they acknowledged her intelligence. Just intelligent enough to avoid failing, never quite striving hard enough to fully challenge herself. That fall, senior year was progressing exactly as she'd envisioned. Prom committee, brand collaborations, homecoming queen virtually assured, no one jeopardized her position until Ayanna Brooks walked in. She arrived without fanfare, no elaborate smile, no designer handbag, just a simple canvas backpack, her braided hair neatly pulled back, and a subtle acknowledgement to the teacher. She had transferred from a charter school in Vallejo. A full scholarship based on academic merit was the extent of what anyone initially knew. She took a seat 2 rows in front of Brielle in AP Literature, and within the first week, murmurs began regarding her already achieving the highest grade in the class. Within 2 weeks, Mr. Daniels read aloud one of Ayanna's essays, not only to check for grammar, but because it genuinely affected him. Brielle disapproved of this. She didn't voice it, but a slight movement of her lip betrayed her feelings. The way her eyes focused intently when Ayanna responded to questions without notes, and the subtle sound she made when Mr. Daniels asked her to expand on what Ayanna had just said, all revealed her discomfort. Brielle had witnessed many new girls arrive and depart. Attractive girls, intelligent girls, unusual girls, but Ayanna was unlike any she's seen before. She made no effort to compete. She didn't flirt with teachers or seek attention, and that, in turn, made her stand out. In the cafeteria, Ayanna sat alone, not in a way that suggested sadness, but more as if she preferred it. She read during lunch, sometimes with earbuds in, sometimes not, consistently calm and unreadable. Brielle found it difficult to tolerate her composure. "She's acting like she's better than everyone," Brielle muttered to her friend Mackenzie one afternoon. Near the gym's vending machines, they stood. Mackenzie chewed her gum and gave a slight lift of her shoulders. She appeared reserved, perhaps even timid, Brielle observed. "No," Brielle stated directly. "She's strategic. One doesn't adopt an aura of innocence and grace unless it's intentional, meant to attract attention." This wasn't envy, Brielle reassured herself. It was about maintaining control. If others began to admire Ayanna's intelligence and composed demeanor, what would that signify for her? And what of the carefully constructed persona she had cultivated? It began subtly, with hushed comments near Ayanna's locker. Remarks like, "Oh wow, did you bring your thesis today?" Manufactured gasps occurred during roll call when Ayanna's name was called in multiple AP classes. There were also sarcastic comments about her library clothes and her perceived religious demeanor. Ayanna remained unfazed. She consistently attended, excelled on every quiz, and navigated the halls as if the behavior didn't affect her. Even when Brielle made eye contact and smirked, she received no response. However, this only escalated the situation. Brielle craved a reaction. She desired control. What she couldn't control worried her. However, a change was imminent, and not the kind Brielle anticipated. It began with Brielle posing a question just loud enough to be heard. Does she even talk? Or does she just blink Morse code? This occurred during AP Statistics. Several students laughed quietly. Ayanna looked to the side, but continued her work. Mr. Fielding remained silent, but hesitated noticeably before resuming the lesson. Brielle smiled, and the others followed suit. She had established the atmosphere. Things became less difficult after that. It was almost natural, a contrived cough whenever Ayanna entered class. Disdainful eye rolls when she raised her hand. Brielle even began imitating the way Ayanna sat, back straight, legs crossed, hands folded, in an exaggerated and cartoonish way, just enough for her friends to erupt in laughter. Ayanna made no reply, but she was aware. Naturally, she was aware. During one afternoon in the library, Ayanna was seated by the window, working on calculus problems. A junior, Sean, pulled a chair over to her and sat down without permission. "You don't talk much, huh?" he said. She looked up. I talk, just not when I don't need to. You think you're better than everyone? Or are you just antisocial? She replied, I think I'm trying to study. He scoffed, stood up, and walked away. Two girls near the printer chuckled. One of them murmured, attitude on silent mode. Ayana didn't react visibly, though her pencil paused. Later that evening at home, her mother observed that she was uncharacteristically subdued. You all right, sweetie? She inquired, serving rice. Ayana offered a slight movement of her shoulders. The usual? Her mom regarded her with a knowing glance, the kind reserved for moments when a child is troubled but not ready to share. Meanwhile, in El Dorado Hills, Brielle was eating dinner with her mom, checking TikTok while pushing around salmon she hadn't requested. I heard the new girl aced the chem test, her mom said, not looking up from her phone. Cool, Brielle replied. Maybe she could tutor you. Brielle looked up slowly. What? You know, if you want to bring your grade up before early decision apps are due. She's not even applying to the same schools as me. How do you know? I just know. Her mom didn't push further, but Brielle's jaw stayed, clenched the rest of the meal. Back at school, the teasing moved into group chats. A meme depicting Ayana studying by herself during lunch circulated online, accompanied by the caption, plotting her next essay to destroy us all. It spread through private stories, appeared repeatedly in comment sections, and evolved into a shared joke. Publicly, no one defended her. However, Ethan Mercado, a reserve student from AV Club, approached her at her locker one afternoon. Hey, are you okay? He asked. She looked up, visibly surprised. Yeah, why? She replied. I've seen what's being said, he stated, and I don't participate in the laughter. She nodded slowly. Thank you, she said. He paused. Have you ever wanted company during lunch? Or something similar? She didn't confirm, but she didn't decline either. Regardless, the stares continued. The whispers persisted, and Brielle kept observing, always from a distance, attempting to understand why Ayana wasn't faltering. Then, one day in lit class, Mr. Daniels made an error. He returned essays. Ayana's received a 99. Brielle's received a 72. He didn't comment verbally, simply distributing the papers as normal. However, Brielle noticed the grades and became upset. Did you even read mine? She asked, her voice sharp. The room fell silent. Mr. Daniels blinked. Excuse me? You gave her a 99, and mine barely passes. Brielle responded, If you have a question about your grade, we can discuss it after class, she said dismissively. Whatever, he muttered. She kept her eyes on the desk, her pen tapping lightly. After class, Ethan approached Ayana again. She's scared of you, you know. Ayana shook her head. She just doesn't understand me. She doesn't want to. This was a critical moment. Brielle felt a surge of fear, knowing she was on the verge of an action that would dramatically alter circumstances. This time, the entire student body of Meadowbrook High would witness it. Thursday afternoon felt interminable, heavy with humidity. The air conditioning in the school cafeteria had been unreliable throughout the week, contributing to an already strained atmosphere. Brielle, feeling listless and agitated, rested her chin on her hand, gazing across the room at Ayana from her tray of uneaten chicken nuggets. Ayana was in her usual spot, near the far windows, eating quietly with a paperback, Things Fall Apart, beside her tray. Brielle scowled. Naturally, she's reading something with a title like that, she murmured. Mackenzie looked up, questioning. You're still focused on this. She seems to think she's special. Exactly, Brielle retorted. And people are treating that like it's a positive thing. Mackenzie paused. So, are you suggesting you want to throw food at her? No, Brielle stated. She wanted to allow her a brief pause. It was then that the concept began to develop. She involved Zach and Nina, two juniors eager to gain her favor. They possessed access to the AV Club's green screen equipment and a copy of the morning announcements video. Within less than a day, they created a fabricated segment. Ayana's face was superimposed onto an old news anchor's body, accompanied by robotic audio. The title read, Ayana Brooks proclaims herself queen of Roosevelt High. It was foolish, yet well executed. It appeared remarkably authentic. The strategy? To broadcast it during morning announcements just before the start of second period. And it succeeded. Initially, that Friday morning, Immediately following the Pledge of Allegiance, the video began playing. For a moment, many students paused, visibly confused. Then laughter erupted. It was loud, unpleasant, and reverberated through the hallways. Ayana was in third period English when she heard about it. A sophomore rushed into the classroom, holding a phone, and showed her the video. "Yo, Ayana, did you see this?" he said, still laughing. She didn't respond. She simply looked at the screen, her own face appearing warped, her voice sounding mechanical and derisive. She blinked once, then closed her eyes firmly, as if attempting to erase everything. Afterward that day, Brielle encountered her in the hall. "Hey," she said gently, "I enjoyed your short presentation this morning." Ayana halted her movement, turned deliberately. Their eyes connected, truly connected for the first time. And for a brief instant, Brielle sensed something. Not regret, but a trace of doubt. As if she wasn't certain anymore who held the advantage. That night, Ayana sat at the kitchen table, her laptop closed, tea growing cold beside her. Her mom sat across from her. "They're messing with you again?" Ayana nodded. "You want me to call someone?" "No, it'll make it worse." Her mom leaned forward. "Baby, what they're doing isn't just teasing anymore. It's harassment." Ayana's jaw clenched. "They're waiting for me to snap. I'm not giving them that." Her mom studied her face. "You sure?" Ayana's voice was low. "I'm sure." Her hands trembled beneath the table. The following morning, she arrived at school wearing black leggings and a plain hoodie. She carried nothing but her phone, no books, no backpack. She proceeded directly past the main office, bypassing her locker, and headed straight to the gym. There, she sat silently on the bleachers as the warm-ups began. The girls' volleyball team observed her. Coach Ramirez noticed her and came over. "Ayana, is everything all right?" he asked. "I just need to use the gym after school. Is that a problem?" He appeared puzzled but nodded. There were only 15 minutes between practice and basketball. That was all the time she had. She thanked him, and she waited. After school, Ayana returned. Coach had left the mats out. She took one to the center of the floor and placed her bag next to it. For the subsequent 15 minutes, she moved. Fluidly, sharply, powerfully. Snap kicks, elbow strikes, pivot turns. Breathe. Reset. Again, there wasn't any music. There was no audience. Just motion. Just discipline. She was unaware that someone had entered. She was completely unaware that he had recorded it. It was Ethan. He remained silent, simply observing. His hand trembled almost imperceptibly as he pressed record. Later that night, he posted a 19-second clip with the caption, "They picked the wrong one." No tags, no names, just movement, precision, focus. The video quickly gained attention, and once it spread, nothing at Roosevelt would ever be the same. By Monday morning, the clip had reached over 200,000 views. No names, no faces. A young woman in a hoodie moved with the precision of an action film star. Her movements were seamless, accurate, and completely controlled. The video gained widespread attention on TikTok, sparking numerous reactions. Users created stitched videos attempting to replicate her kicks, and the comment section was filled with speculation. Who was she? She executed every movement flawlessly. It was evident she had received training, though at Roosevelt High, the truth wasn't widely known. Not yet. In first period, Brielle was seated with her feet resting on the desk, using her phone. She watched the video, paused, and tilted her head. "She looks familiar," she muttered. By lunch, someone had made the connection. Ayana's name began circulating through the halls again. But this time, the tone was different. Less ridicule, more inquisitiveness, and something else Brielle hadn't experienced before. Respect. "She's the one from the video. I thought she was just a nerd." "Yo, she's genuine." Brielle sensed it. The change. Not a complete takeover, but its initial stage. She began to notice hushed conversations that excluded her. Praise that wasn't directed at her. The shifts were minor, yet they caused her distress. That afternoon, she confronted Ayana near the science wing. Ayana was walking alone, wearing earbuds and a hoodie. She paused when Brielle blocked her path, arms crossed. "You think you're clever, huh?" Brielle said. Ayana removed one earbud. What? Are you trying to go viral now? Playing the humble angle? Ayana blinked deliberately. I didn't post that video. Brielle let out a scoff. It seemed like a coincidence that this appeared just as people started calling her strange. Ayana remained still, composed. You know what your problem is? Brielle moved closer. You carry yourself as if you're above speaking to anyone, and then you act surprised when people don't care for you. I don't act surprised, Ayana replied quietly. Brielle's cheeks reddened. She glanced around. Several students nearby had paused, observing, watching, waiting. I'm warning you, Brielle hissed. Ayana turned to leave. Then Brielle pushed her. The push wasn't forceful, but it was calculated, public enough to draw attention, and loud enough to elicit gasps. Ayana faltered slightly, regained her balance, and turned to face Brielle. They held each other's gaze for a drawn-out moment. Subsequently, Ayana reacted. She avoided striking Brielle. Instead, she intercepted the subsequent push with such speed that Brielle's wrist rotated, throwing her off balance. Ayana then moved to her side and resumed her position. The entire exchange concluded in fewer than 3 seconds. The incident was recorded on a phone. It captured the precise moment Ayana's foot landed, the subtle movement of Brielle's arms, Ayana's stillness, her unwillingness to retaliate. This new video surpassed the initial one, spreading rapidly. By that evening, news organizations had begun contacting Roosevelt High. Some described it as a display of controlled self-defense. Others characterized it as the moment the reserved girl silenced everything. Ayana remained silent, making no social media posts or tweets. She remained silent regarding the online discussions. She simply attended school Tuesday morning, holding her head high and with her hoodie unzipped. Surprisingly, there was no laughter, neither in the hallways, nor in the cafeteria, and not even within the group chats. Brielle, however, struggled to reach third period before others began to avoid her. This wasn't due to fear, but rather embarrassment. The question lingered. Why would she push her? What prompted her to touch her? Everyone saw the video. Ayana hadn't even thrown a punch. Brielle attempted to explain. She tried to make light of the situation. No one paid attention. And for the first time in her life, Brielle Wentworth felt truly observed. Not in the manner she had constructed her existence. However, the significant consequences were yet to unfold. They wouldn't start until individuals began taking sides. By midweek, Ayana Brooks was a name recognized beyond Sacramento. A local channel broadcasted the video, presenting a brief report. Student defends herself with poise after being confronted at school. The martial arts studio in Vallejo shared a clip of her, commending her technique and poise. A Reddit user discovered earlier footage of her competing in a junior nationals tournament when she was 10 years old. She had secured gold. Consequently, Ayana transitioned from being a reserve scholarship student to a subject of public attention. At Roosevelt High, a palpable change occurred. Teachers discussed her in break rooms, and guidance counselors conducted private meetings. Several parents emailed the school, inquiring about plans to handle bullying following recent occurrences. Brielle was experiencing a significant amount of it. She attempted to appear unaffected, arriving at school wearing sunglasses and large hoodies, feigning a lack of distress. However, the pain persisted. Each time someone ignored her, each time Ayana's name was mentioned without including hers, she felt deeply hurt and recalled Mr. Daniels' words. Courage sometimes is saying nothing at all. Demonstrating his actions through silence, he looked towards Ayana, who remained unengaged. Brielle felt a constriction in her chest. During lunch, she joined Mackenzie and Zach, but the table felt desolate. Discussions became uncomfortable. People avoided mentioning the unspoken, that perhaps Brielle had overreacted, that perhaps Ayana was not at fault. Compounding the situation, her supporters began to criticize her. The remarks on her most recent post were harsh. Didn't you push her? Why are you upset that she's talented? You've contributed to why people distrust popular girls. Brielle deactivated her comments, then her DMs, then her account. At home, she forcefully closed her laptop and tossed her phone across the room. Her mother gently knocked, opened the door slightly. Would you like to talk? No. You've been unusually silent recently. I'm fine. You're not. I said I'm fine. Silence. Then her mom's voice, soft. Sometimes when it feels as though everything is falling apart, it's simply the truth revealing itself. The door closed again. Returning to school, Ayana remained unchanged. She carried herself without needing to demonstrate anything. Her clothing was the same. She showed no signs of boasting. She didn't mention the events that transpired. She simply proceeded through the day as before. That silence, which Brielle had previously disliked, was now the quality people admired the most. She was no longer simply the girl who kicked. She was something more, something Brielle had never taken the time to comprehend. Even Ethan observed this. He located her close to the lockers on Thursday afternoon, immediately following class. "You okay?" he inquired. Ayana offered a weary smile, acknowledging his presence. "You know people are supporting you, right?" He continued. "I'm not attempting to create factions." Ayana responded, "I understand." "But you unintentionally did," he stated, simply by remaining still. She hesitated. "I didn't desire any of this." He replied, "I know." Nearby, Brielle observed their conversation. For the initial time, she wasn't experiencing anger. Instead, she felt bewildered by the recognition Ayana was receiving. It wasn't popularity, it was genuine respect. It lacked fanfare and wasn't staged. It required no enhancements or labels. It simply existed. Brielle sat in her car after school, observing her reflection in the rearview mirror. Not the mascara or the precise eyeliner, not the carefully constructed image she typically presented. Just a girl uncertain of her identity without the attention. But even she couldn't escape the upcoming moment, the one that would ultimately compel a discussion neither of them was prepared for. The rain fell steadily on Friday as Brielle uttered the words that surprised everyone, even herself. She discovered Ayana standing beneath the shelter outside the East Gym, waiting for her bus amidst the storm. Most students had already departed for the day. Brielle paused for a moment, her designer boots already wet, her hair beginning to frizz. Ayana noticed her approach, but remained still. "I need to speak," Brielle said, her voice quiet. Ayana blinked. "Then speak." "I was wrong," she said. "I'm not saying that for the internet or to fix my reputation. I didn't know how to deal with you," Brielle continued. "You were quiet, intelligent. People appreciated you without any effort on your part. That worried me." "You don't need to offer an explanation," Ayana stated. "Actually, I do, because I invested months believing I had to be everything, constantly. Flawless, boisterous, well-liked. And then you arrived and didn't attempt to be anything other than yourself. Yet people still acknowledged you, as if you were significant. I don't need you to like me," Ayana said softly. "I know. That's why it affected me." The rain continued to fall. Ayana folded her arms. "You humiliated me. Openly. On multiple occasions." "I know," Ayana replied. "You caused people to believe I was vulnerable. I initially thought you were," Brielle confessed. "But you're not." A silence followed. "I've been observing that video," Brielle added. "Not the one where you blocked me. The other one. At the gym. You appeared focused, in control, as if nothing could disrupt you." Ayana looked at her, her expression unreadable. "Why now?" she asked. "Because I finally stopped talking long enough to listen," Brielle responded. At that moment, Ethan appeared, standing a few feet away with his backpack over one shoulder. He didn't interrupt. He simply looked at Ayana, as if assessing the situation. Ayana gave him a slight nod before turning back to Brielle. "I don't need an apology. I needed space." "You've already taken enough," Brielle said, biting her lip. "So we're just done?" Ayana stated. "We were never anything. You don't have to be the antagonist in your own narrative. However, I am not here to be your path to improvement." Brielle remained silent. There was nothing further to communicate. She turned and proceeded into the rain. Ayana lingered for a moment, simply inhaling. Afterward that evening, she settled on the couch with her mom, wearing warm socks and a throw blanket. "How was school?" her mom inquired. Ayana paused. "Complex," her mom replied with a smile. "Isn't that just life?" Ayana chuckled. "A gentle, genuine one." Roosevelt faced challenges, yet progress was evident. Mr. Daniels began incorporating essays centered on character development. Students who had previously remained silent were now addressing instances of minor misbehavior. Even the school board initiated a limited program focusing on bullying, student support, and mental health. However, the most significant shift was in the way individuals interacted. They observed each other with curiosity rather than pity or a focus on social standing. At some point, the quiet began to offer them a lesson. One afternoon, Mackenzie sat beside Ayanna in the cafeteria. There was no apology, no casual conversation. Just two girls eating together quietly. It needed nothing more. And Brielle? She hadn't been posting as much lately. She began arriving to class promptly. She joined the yearbook team, working behind the camera, not in front of it. It wasn't about improving her public perception. She simply needed something genuine for a change. Ayanna never went viral again. She didn't require it. She possessed what was essential. Her grades, her strength, her boundaries, her voice, even when she chose not to use it. However, the world hadn't forgotten, and neither had she. Certain events don't gain widespread attention. They remain with you. And that's where genuine transformation takes place. 2 months later, Roosevelt High appeared unchanged. Same lockers, same lunch lines, same morning announcements. Yet, a subtle alteration was perceptible. The focus that used to hold the greatest importance. Who possessed the latest shoes? The social gatherings faded. The meaning of respect evolved. It wasn't expressed through enthusiastic applause, boisterous cheers, online likes, or shares. Instead, it manifested in understated moments of genuine connection. For example, when a freshman dropped her books, four students immediately helped her without a word exchanged. Or when a newcomer sat alone, another person simply asked, "You want company?" While imperfections remained, people began to reflect more deeply. There was a deliberate pause before jokes were made, and a focus on checking in rather than immediately joining in. Ayanna remained near the windows in the cafeteria. She continued to wear her hoodie on some days and still carried herself with a sense of self-assuredness. People now acknowledged her with small gestures, a wave, a smile, a casual greeting, not because they sought anything from her, but because they had finally recognized her for who she truly was. Ethan also stayed around. They didn't talk every day, but when they did, their conversations held significance. "You still training?" he asked one day as they walked out of school. "Yeah," she replied. "Every week." "Will she compete again?" She shrugged. "Possibly. Or perhaps not. I'm not doing it to win," she explained. "To focus. To stay grounded," she added, smiling. Regarding Brielle, she was still in the process of understanding things. Certain days, she reverted to previous patterns. The sarcasm, the desire for control. However, she would then recognize it, offer apologies when she previously wouldn't have, assist with tasks that went unacknowledged, share in someone else's humor without needing to be the focus. Change isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's subtle, quietly, internally. Mr. Daniels emphasized a point in class one day that resonated with both of them. Respect, he stated, is not something you demand. It's something you earn. Frequently, through how you treat people when you believe no one is observing. Ayanna recorded the words in her notebook, not because she required the reminder, but because it felt like a meaningful return. People ceased inquiring about what truly occurred in that video. It was irrelevant now. They had witnessed the authentic story unfold over weeks, not found in video snippets. Instead, consider the decisions made. These actions carry greater significance than fleeting online sensations. The world continued, as it invariably does. However, certain students at Roosevelt progressed. They gained wisdom, developed empathy, and became slightly more observant. Occasionally, when unnoticed, Ayanna would stop while walking down the hallway, observe her surroundings, and recognize a truth. She remained unchanged, yet those around her had evolved, and that was sufficient. Occasionally, the most impactful decision you can make is remaining authentic, even when all eyes are on you, anticipating collapse. It isn't necessary to be vocal to be acknowledged. It isn't required to struggle to prevail. And it isn't essential to alter yourself to gain respect. Allow your actions to demonstrate. Let your boundaries remain firm. And let your silence convey the significance that clamor cannot. If this story prompted a shift in your perspective regarding how we treat others or redefined your understanding of true strength, please like this video and subscribe. More stories are forthcoming that challenge assumptions and remind us that character isn't developed during times of ease. It's demonstrated when faced with adversity. Thank you for watching. Remain steadfast. She was simply known as the janitor. They ridiculed her for reading while she worked. Then they were stunned when she delivered the valedictorian speech at graduation, revealing everything. At Larchmont Hills Academy, everyone recognized Olivia Cranston and Camille Strathmore. It was understood. They were the daughters of families who traveled by private plane and ate at restaurants where the menus didn't list prices. Their presence in a room prompted people to either rise or avert their gaze, a reaction born of habit, fear, or envy. They weren't malicious, not precisely, but they understood early on that kindness wasn't essential. Politeness was a choice. Deference? It was reserved for individuals who could provide something in return. And for someone like Janice Albury, the reserved black woman with gentle eyes and rough hands, there was no advantage to be found. Janice had been employed at the school for nearly 2 years. Each weekday, she arrived before sunrise and departed well after the final SUV had exited the gated parking lot. She scrubbed the floors, shined the trophies in the main hall, and ensured the restrooms were fresh. She seldom spoke unless addressed, and her voice, when she did, was as tranquil as a still pond. But Camille observed something one day during lunch break. She had forgotten her phone in the chemistry lab, and hurrying back, she noticed Janice in an empty classroom, not tidying, but looking through a large biology textbook, her lips moving as if saying something softly. Camille rested against the door frame and smiled. "I didn't think you were interested in science," she said. Janice looked up. "I'm just reviewing some earlier learning." Camille angled her head. "Are you going to teach now as well?" Janice smiled. "Not precisely." It began modestly. There were whispered comments and laughter when Janice walked by. Camille told Olivia, and the two created a playful game from it. "Oh, look," Olivia whispered one morning as Janice wheeled her cart past their lunch table. "Einstein with a mop," Camille chuckled. "Probably writing her thesis on floor wax." They laughed a little too loudly. Other students overheard. Some laughed with them. Others avoided eye contact. No one intervened. Janice kept her head down. It was her usual practice. The students overlooked the way her eyes paused on the school crest etched into the wall, her gaze thoughtful rather than resentful. They failed to observe her tendency to listen more than to speak, or her habit of keeping a notebook in the side pocket of her cart, partially filled with notes. One person showed her kindness. Mr. Del Toro, a literature teacher from Fresno who had a fondness for those often overlooked. On one occasion, he observed Janice carefully aligning the copies of To Kill a Mockingbird on a cart just outside his classroom. "You know," he remarked, "most people simply stack them and proceed." Janice offered a slight shrug. "That book warrants more than crooked edges," she said. He chuckled. "I often say that," he stated, then paused. "Have you read it?" Janice responded to his question. "Twice. Initially in high school, and subsequently when I was mature enough to grasp its true significance." He never requested anything further, but from that point forward he would leave a book for her on the bench outside the staff room every other Friday. No message, no inquiries. Nevertheless, the girls persisted. One afternoon, Olivia waited until Janice passed by, then whispered, "I bet she sleeps in the janitor's closet. Probably dreams in Clorox." It wasn't simply impolite, it was unkind. But Janice continued walking, and that disturbed Olivia more than anything. She anticipated embarrassment or anger, or at the very least a reaction. Janice's silence, however, felt inescapable. This made her a figure to be reckoned with. The lights at Northwood High typically dimmed around 8 p.m. Most evenings, though a few always remained lit, sufficient to create long shadows across the marble corridors. It was during these hours that Janice seemed to transform. As the classrooms fell silent and the usual teenage bustle subsided, she would move her cart into the supply closet, change into a clean shirt, and bring her notebook to room 114. Room 114 was no longer designated for a specific class. It had a flickering light and one desk leg shorter than the others. Most teachers steered clear of it. However, Janice had adopted it. The door did not lock, and that was acceptable. She didn't require privacy. She simply needed space. She would retrieve her laptop, a 6-year-old Dell lacking the N key, and sign into her coursework. She was 6 credits shy of finishing a degree in educational leadership through an accelerated adult program offered by the same university that operated Larchmont Hills Academy. A small, understated provision located within the staff handbook provided full scholarships to employees who worked a minimum of 30 hours a week. Most staff members overlooked it. Janice had not. It wasn't about ambition at this point. The focus was on completing a project that had been halted years prior. This was a time when she possessed a child, a husband, and a secure job in Maryland, only to lose all 3 within 18 months. Life has a way of deflating you before you're aware you've been holding your breath. She never expressed her struggles to anyone. It wasn't a behavior she'd been taught. Occasionally, late at night, she would receive a message from her sister in Detroit. "You sleeping or still playing superhero?" Janice would respond with a photo of her textbook and a brief message. Chapter 6 is proving difficult. Her sister would then send a laughing emoji, followed by, "You're still the smartest person I know. Don't let those stuck-up girls get to you." She never shared with her sister the full extent of the difficulties. She omitted the incident where Camille accidentally knocked over the bucket of dirty water and seemed to find amusement as Janice knelt to clean it. There was also the incident when Olivia confided in a group of parents during a school tour, suggesting the institution favored hiring individuals with charitable backgrounds. Yet, Janice persisted. She consistently arrived 5 minutes early. Her cart was always spotless, her uniform immaculate. She possessed patience but lacked innocence. Her understanding of the school's customs surpassed that of the students. Beneath the refined wooden interiors and carefully selected diversity pamphlets, there existed a decay. Not everyone, naturally, but sufficiently pervasive to permeate the atmosphere. Janice had no intention of rectifying it. Her task was simple: observe, listen, and document. Unbeknownst to the students, and even the staff, Janice had been selected for a role extending beyond cleaning floors. 2 years prior, following an internal report alleging the Academy's neglect of racial and economic discrimination, the Board of Trustees approved a discreet strategy. They decided to place someone within the school, silently. Someone who wouldn't attract attention. Someone who could witness everything. While working part-time at a community college in Oakland, Janice received a job offer. The position came with no title or special privileges, simply an ID badge, a mop, and a defined purpose. That purpose was to observe, to take notes, and to document the patterns of behavior that were not able to be captured in policy memos or camera footage. The work was not glamorous. However, it was significant. And late at night, with her coursework open in one window and her field notes in another, Janice recorded everything. It wasn't only the cruelty, but the indifference, the smiles that vanished the moment someone turned away. She also wrote about the good teachers, the limited number of students who met her gaze. She recalled how Mr. Del Toro left that copy of Beloved with a sticky note that said, "For someone who understands silence." Still, each shift drained her, not from the labor itself, but from a necessity of feigning. She bore their ignorance as a second uniform, and with each passing day, it became increasingly burdensome. A change was on the horizon, though not as they anticipated. By early spring, the students at Larchmont Hills Academy were already largely disengaged. Señoritas had arrived gradually, like a dense fog, subtle, pervasive, and self-satisfied. Olivia and Camille frequently spent their days in the senior lounge, examining college acceptance emails and making critical remarks about those they perceived as inferior. However, subtle comments were no longer sufficient. The initial excitement had faded. They desired a significant reaction. On a Monday morning, Camille entered the admin office and pretended to be worried. "I think the janitor's been stealing test copies," she whispered to the front desk clerk, making her voice sound very low. "I saw her in a classroom late at night, alone." Ms. Robbins looked surprised. "Janice, are you certain?" Camille adopted her most innocent expression. "I don't want to cause problems for anyone, but this school is supposed to be secure, isn't it?" It was a carefully planned action. If anything resulted from it, so much the better. A sense of unease lingered. That afternoon, Janice was summoned to the operations office. The interaction was presented as a standard procedure with no direct accusations. She remained composed as the facility's manager reviewed his notes, visibly ill at ease. "We simply wanted to inquire if you've been present in unoccupied classrooms during your shift," he stated. "I clean all classrooms assigned to me." Janice responded directly. "Yes, but do you remain longer? For any purpose?" He maintained eye contact. "I complete my assigned tasks. Occasionally, I require a brief respite, as do most people." He acknowledged this with a nod and made a note. "Very well, that concludes the discussion." Janice rose. "Should any questions arise regarding my work, I would welcome a straightforward discussion." The gentleman's cheeks flushed slightly. "There are no concerns. Simply, you understand procedure." It was a flimsy fabrication, and both were aware of it. Outside the office, Janice located Camille resting against the wall, feigning interest in her phone. The smile offered was not amicable. "Everything's satisfactory, Miss Albury?" Her tone was saccharine. Janice remained unmoved. It was more effective than one might expect. Camille's face faltered briefly, then quickly returned to its characteristic sneer. However, this was no longer a trivial matter. Camille and Olivia had matured observing individuals evade consequences. This fostered their confidence and impulsiveness. 2 days elapsed before Olivia planned a further incident. She let a silver necklace fall near the janitor's closet and then dramatically announced its disappearance from her locker during lunch. A small crowd assembled. She raised her wrist in a theatrical gesture. "I'm certain I had it in there earlier today," she declared. "I suppose it could be lost permanently," Camille observed. Their friends chuckled, some visibly anxious. "Perhaps check the mop bucket," they joked. However, when one of the admin staff overheard the remark and volunteered to investigate, Olivia quickly recanted. "No, I'm sure I simply misplaced it. It's nothing significant," she said. The immediate concern subsided, but the awkwardness remained. That evening, Mr. Del Toro walked past Janice in the hallway. He stopped. "You're doing okay," he said. Janice looked up from her card. "You've been here long enough to know the games these kids play," he sighed. "Too long sometimes." There was a pause. "Is there anything I can do?" She thought for a moment. "Keep doing what you're doing. That's rare enough." What neither of them knew, what no one knew, was that Janice had already sent her first internal report to the board. Documented dates, quotes, and behavior patterns were observed. Names redacted for now, but she wasn't the only one being monitored anymore. An independent firm had initiated discrete audits. These audits included interviews and surveys presented as student engagement questionnaires. Camille and Olivia believed they had complete control over the school, but attention was shifting. Rumors began to change their focus. Despite this, the girls continued their actions. Cruelty had developed into a pattern, and patterns are difficult to change when they have never faced repercussions. Then, one Friday, Janice heard something that stopped her. In the lounge, behind a cracked door, Camille was speaking to a boy from the tennis team. "You know that janitor, Janice?" she said. "My mom says people like her are just here to make the place look diverse." She referred to it as optics. The boy laughed. Olivia added, "My dad said the school's bleeding money giving those scholarship perks to staff. It's basically charity," Camille scoffed. Unable to repair the situation with books, Janice stood quietly, 1 foot still in the hallway, one hand gripping the edge of her cart. She said nothing, but something within her shifted. She had been patient long enough, but now she had everything she needed, and it was almost time to show them. Before she was sweeping floors under fluorescent lights, Janice Albury had been someone else entirely. 12 years prior, She held the position of Director of Curriculum Development for a public school district in Maryland, known then as Janice Simmons. Her responsibilities included managing a corner office, overseeing 3 staff members, and proudly displaying a plaque from the state superintendent. She was married and a mother. Life at that time possessed a sense of order and comfort. However, that changed with a tragic event. Her husband Carr was struck by a delivery truck on I-83 during a snowstorm. He perished in the accident. Her daughter, Kira, who was 6 years old at the time, survived, though with significant injuries. After 2 months spent in a hospital bed, Janice faced a year of surgeries and rehabilitation. While insurance covered a significant portion of the expenses, some costs remained. Janice drew upon her savings, her retirement funds, and ultimately sold their home. Following this, Kira developed pneumonia, which tragically led to her passing. Janice resigned from her job 2 weeks following the funeral. The sight of a school brought back the image of Kira's empty chair, and the sound of children's laughter in the hallways served as a painful reminder of her loss. She moved around, taking temporary work, staying with friends, then in rented rooms, ultimately settling into a small studio apartment in Antioch, California. Despite these changes, she consistently read and continued learning. This pursuit led her to discover a program, a little-known educational equity initiative offered through a university partnership, representing a fresh opportunity. When asked if she would agree to work undercover to examine behavioral differences between students from privileged backgrounds and faculty perspectives, she readily accepted. She acted not out of financial need, but because the system had let down too many individuals resembling her. She refused to accept this inaction. Applying for the janitorial position using her maiden name, she successfully completed the background checks, keeping her degree and credentials secured in a folder at home. Initially, her goal was simply to observe and listen, to remain unnoticed. She had no plan to participate. The incidents she witnessed were disheartening. A senior teacher deriding a student with a speech impediment under the assumption of privacy. Discussions about a girl's financial aid occurred at a staff meeting, presented as a personal failing. Then there were Camille and Olivia, whose parents' substantial donations had secured the gymnasium's naming rights in honor of a hedge fund. Their self-assurance stemmed not from conceit, but from a sense of privilege. Janice felt disheartened by what she observed. Eleanor Larchmont, the school's founder, had originally conceived of the academy as a place for future leaders from all backgrounds. However, that original vision had diminished over time, obscured by financial influence, promotional efforts, and preferential admissions practices. Consequently, Janice began her work. Her notebook rapidly filled with detailed observations, specific dates, recurring linguistic patterns, staff reactions. She consistently attended faculty meetings when possible, choosing to sit in the rear of the room. She posed inquiries that prompted discomfort among those present. She took on committee assignments that others avoided. Steadily and carefully, she became the source of information the board required. And during evenings, as the halls became vacant, she studied. She wasn't simply observing, she was revitalizing herself. Each finished module advanced her progress toward that second degree. Each submitted essay felt like rediscovering a part of the woman she once was. During one evening spent reviewing a case study about institutional gatekeeping, a particular sentence caught her attention. It stated that genuine authority doesn't proclaim itself, it waits to be recognized. She emphasized this line with underlines. Graduation was approaching rapidly, just 3 weeks away. She had finished the program without drawing much attention. Her grade point average ranked her among the highest in her group. The board had previously approved her to address the audience. Camille and Olivia continued to walk through the halls with an air of confidence, unaware of what was about to unfold. The faculty, too, were on the verge of a realization that learning extends beyond the classroom. Janice had observed them for 2 years. Now, she was poised to step forward, taking the central position, and they would be completely surprised. That morning, the sky above Antioch was clear, excessively bright considering the anxiety some individuals brought into the Larchmont Hills Academy Auditorium. Families occupied the seats, proud parents filled with anticipation and clutching phones, surrounded by flowers, ties, and costly perfume. The scene appeared flawless. Camille Strathmore wore a champagne-colored stole that her mother had flown in from France. Olivia Cranston had her hair professionally styled before dawn, her makeup applied to endure the entire day. They smiled for photographs, laughed with joy, and stood with the grace of young women who'd been raised to believe the world was within their reach. Behind the scenes, Janice remained still in her black robe. There were no embellishments, no unnecessary details. She declined the academic award the committee presented, stating she had no need for it. What she desired was a single moment, just one, and that moment had arrived. The dean, Dr. Leonard, approached her, holding a program. "Ready, Ms. Albury?" She met his gaze. She had been prepared. He offered a restrained smile and returned toward the podium. Camille and Olivia did not even look at her as they passed by in their elegant gowns. It was understandable. She was unnoticed once more, simply an element of the surroundings. The ceremony commenced as it always did. Names were announced, families applauded, and speeches were delivered. The school's jazz trio performed something gentle and unremarkable. Subsequently, Dr. Leonard approached the microphone. "As we approach the end of this year's commencement, we have a particularly noteworthy announcement, one that, intentionally, has remained private until this moment." Students adjusted in their seats. Parents moved closer. Even faculty appeared puzzled. This year, the Board of Trustees authorized a confidential academic pilot program meant to enable working staff at our institution to pursue higher education with complete anonymity. The program demands both academic excellence and professional integrity of the highest order. Camille glanced at Olivia. Olivia showed a frown. Murmurs began behind them. Dr. Leonard proceeded. "We are pleased to announce that the highest academic honor this year goes not to a student you might have learned alongside, but to someone many of you overlooked." He paused, then stated distinctly, "Please welcome Janice Albury, this year's valedictorian." A stillness hung in the air. Then, with a suddenness like a glass shattering in a quiet room, the news arrived. People turned their heads, their mouths agape. Camille remained motionless, her expression rigid. Olivia blinked, then attempted a laugh, only to find herself laughing alone. Janice proceeded deliberately to the stage. Her movements were controlled, her posture upright. She avoided looking at the assembled group until she reached the podium. Then, she surveyed the audience slowly, her gaze finally fixing on Camille and Olivia. Following this, she began to speak. "I arrived at this school with a mop in one hand and a question lingering in my thoughts." Her voice resonated, strong and clear, without any doubt. "I found myself questioning the true nature of this institution. Beyond the official statistics, the promotional materials, and the presentations, I wanted to determine if respect was readily available here, or if it was something that needed to be gained only by those who possessed the appropriate attire, footwear, and family names." The auditorium was completely silent. I dedicated countless evenings tidying up after those who spoke negatively about me. And when they observed me reading a book or attending a classroom session after hours, they mocked. She paused. However, my focus extended beyond mere reading. I was observing, studying, not solely to earn a degree, but to uncover solutions. She turned slightly toward the faculty, and now I possessed them. Students surveyed the room, adjusting in their places. Olivia's expression remained inscrutable. Camille clutched her program firmly, her knuckles white. Janice lifted her chin. "I stand here today, not just as your valedictorian, but as a reflection of the very things that Elmwood High claims to stand for: growth, opportunity, and truth." But she hadn't revealed everything yet, and what she said next would change the room forever. You could hear a cough from 3 rows back. A chair creaked. A phone buzzed quietly against someone's hip, but no one moved to check it. A hush fell over the room as people leaned in, anticipating Janice's next words. She proceeded deliberately, taking a drink of water, briefly reviewing her notes, and neatly folding them. Then, she raised her gaze. I'm sure some of you are wondering how I came to be here. She began, gesturing to her robe and the podium. A few members of the front row, largely faculty, nodded in agreement, seemingly unaware they had done so. My presence here wasn't solely for the purpose of earning a degree, she added. 2 years ago, the university board contacted me following concerns raised, discreetly, privately, regarding the increasing atmosphere of class division and privilege within Ashworth Academy. They requested I consider a position, but not as a faculty member, not as a consultant, as a janitor. At this, the room shifted. Janice allowed the silence to linger. My purpose was to observe. Away from executive suites and scheduled gatherings, I observed. In the corridors, the athletic facilities, the classrooms buzzing with after-hours conversations where students felt safe to speak openly, believing they were unobserved. I was attentive. A woman among the parents visibly expressed discomfort. Over a period, I noted seemingly minor incidents. Yet, these minor incidents accumulated. I saw how some students treated those they perceived as outsiders. I noticed how the lack of intervention from adults permitted that behavior to escalate, and how some of you, who should have been more informed, chose to ignore it. She looked toward the staff. Some of you were aware, and you remained silent. The words struck with force. Camille's mouth felt parched. Olivia had ceased breathing through her nose. She remained motionless, as if blinking would make her vanish. The most troubling aspect, Janice continued, is that the behavior was not concealed. It was open, commonplace, accepted, and frequently it was encouraged, amid smiles, with focus, and with widespread recognition. She paused, taking a moment. I'm not here to criticize you. I'm here to offer a reminder. Her tone became gentler. You cannot determine someone's worth based on their clothing or their profession. You cannot assess dignity through financial status or lineage. She lowered her gaze briefly, then raised her head with renewed focus. I once had a daughter. Her name was Kira. She would have been your age now. A stillness fell over the audience, similar to a chilling breeze. She passed away before she had the opportunity to wear a cap and gown. I'm not sharing this to elicit sympathy. I am sharing it because I see her in all of you. I see who she could have become. And I wonder, if she had been here, would she have been ridiculed as well? No one dared respond. Perhaps not. However, what I know for certain is that if you depart here today, believing the world will defer to your name, you have already failed. She paused again. Education is not merely about books and tests. Remember how you handle the individual you believe you'll never require assistance from, because life possesses a peculiar tendency to shift unexpectedly. Subsequently, the final setback occurred. I have delivered my conclusive report to the board. My assessment has led to a restructuring of the scholarship program, emphasizing integrity and contribution rather than legacy. A comprehensive audit of disciplinary cases spanning the last 5 years will be conducted, and students involved in harassment, encompassing verbal and social forms, will be subject to formal reviews. A subtle vibration resonated from the rear. Several parents murmured amongst themselves, their voices becoming more audible. Janice moved back a little. This isn't retribution, it's accountability. She fixed her attention on Camille, then Olivia, who had lowered her gaze to the floor. And accountability is not swayed by the wealth of your father. However, that wasn't the finality of the matter, as repercussions would follow even after the applause subsided. The ceremony concluded with noticeably diminished enthusiasm compared to its start. Some students applauded, while others seemed unsure how to react. A small number of families, appearing uneasy, left the room before the conclusion. However, Janice maintained her composure, smiling as she returned to her place. It wasn't the back row where she previously observed, but rather near the front, alongside board members and professors who now regarded her with a noticeable change, respect. Camille did not speak as she departed the auditorium. Her father was already waiting close to the car, his expression stern, avoiding her gaze. Olivia's mother, arms crossed, stood by the valley in stunned silence. There were no congratulations, no flowers, just silence. Inside, a small crowd had gathered around Janice. Teachers who had previously offered only a polite greeting were now shaking her hand. Mr. Del Toro remained at a respectful distance, waiting for an opportune moment. You didn't simply speak, he stated when they eventually talked. You transformed the entire atmosphere. Janice looked at him and smiled softly. The air had needed changing. Upon the lawn, several of the younger students expressed their awe. A girl wearing a red dress confided to her friend, "I wasn't aware she attended school," to which her friend responded, "I didn't know she could articulate herself so eloquently." A sense of belated recognition began to spread, an acknowledgement of what had been missed, what had been consciously disregarded. That evening, Janice was in her apartment, with a plastic container of leftover chicken salad and the commencement program placed on the table next to her. Her phone buzzed. It was an email from the board's director. The subject line read, "Thank you." The message stated, "Your final report is being reviewed. Policy meetings begin next week. Your courage will shape the future of this school." She set the phone down and exhaled. It wasn't relief, it wasn't pride, but a quiet, grounded sense of purpose. The kind that didn't require applause or accolades. Meanwhile, news about the graduation speech spread quickly. A video shared online by a teacher's assistant was already spreading among parents and alumni. The title was straightforward: Janitor or Genius, Larchmont's Graduation Shocker. Regarding Camille and Olivia, Camille was required to attend a disciplinary review. Her parents were obligated to participate. A scheduled summer internship at her father's firm was discreetly canceled. It was rumored that she would be asked to fulfill community service hours before receiving her diploma. Olivia's parents initially resisted, indicating they would pursue legal action and requesting apologies. However, upon the school sharing portions of Janice's records, containing witness statements and documented incidents, they ceased their objections. Olivia was permitted to graduate, although her honors were removed. Both girls remained silent regarding the matter, but those familiar with them observed a change. The teasing ended, and the hushed conversations also stopped. The following fall, Janice received a new opportunity, the role of Director of Equity and Inclusion Initiatives for the school district. She agreed to take the position. On her final day, as she walked the halls with her cart, she placed a sticky note on the supply closet door. It read, "Respect isn't owed, it's revealed." With clean floors, clear eyes, J.A., and a final goodbye, she left the mop behind. Leaving Larchmont Hills, she wore a navy blazer and carried a satchel, not to demonstrate professional advancement, but because she felt no further need for discretion. 1 week later, she returned, not in a work uniform, but as a guest speaker for the new staff orientation. Standing at the podium again, she addressed the teachers, new hires, and assistants. "Your job title doesn't determine your influence," she stated. "How you treat people when no one's looking does." Her voice resonated to the back of the room, and this time, everyone was attentive because they finally grasped the meaning. Respect isn't about volume, it's about the impact you make. If this story resonated with you, if it prompted you to reconsider how we treat people, we believe it's sufficient. Subscribe to the channel, share this story, and discuss it. The world would benefit from more individuals with qualities similar to Janice's, and it's valuable to remember that the most reserved person present could impart the most significant lessons.